Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. We are so happy to have you here at our second installment of the Modern Revenue Leader. I'm Lauren Kelly. I'm the CMO of Thoughtexchange, and today we have a really exciting topic to discuss, which is accelerating revenue performance in this remote environment that we all find ourselves in. And we have some amazing modern revenue leaders here to share some of their tips, tricks, best practices, and excited for all of us to have a conversation together around how we navigate this really unique time that we find ourselves in. So first of all, for those of you who are joining us and we're at our first event, I wanted to thank you for all the valuable thoughts that you shared in our exchange during the last Modern Revenue Leader event. In that event, we talked about what are some of the most pressing challenges that you as revenue leaders are facing in this, in this new environment that we find ourselves in. And one of the top thoughts that our guest speakers touched on that you all surfaced during the discussion was, how do we as revenue leaders cut through the noise out there in order to make meaningful connections in this remote environment? And that really actually was the catalyst for today's event. And I wanted to share a couple of interesting thoughts that our leaders from the last session shared. Zahara Washington really resonated with me. She is a senior leader for partnerships within Expedia, and she talked about the best salespeople don't just build relationships with customers, they challenge them. And this was a real turning point in our conversation together. How do we take this unique time and challenge the common thinking and the more old school and traditional approach and innovate our approach? There's also, of course, and this will be a great transition to Kel, his philosophy that's all about how do you make friends before we need anything? How are we building relationships during this time? And that's a great segue to introduce Kel. Kel is CEO at Kool Marketing. Kel's been a CFO, he's been a COO and a CMO. And Kel has spent the majority of his career advising CEOs and helping leaders maximize revenues. So he's passionate about bringing business thought leaders together in forums like this to share insights and co-create. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Kel to take the stage and to really set the stage for what's going to be an action-packed hour. So hold on to your seats. We are going to fill this hour with insights and discussion, and hopefully you will come away from it with a lot of great ways to launch you into the rest of the week. Kel?
Thank you so much, Lauren. We really appreciate Thoughtexchange and all that you do. I'm so excited to be here today. The kickoff event to the Modern Revenue Leader Series was amazing. And before we get into this event, I just want to talk about why. Why are we even doing this? Why we do things has become more important than what we're actually doing. And the reason why we have the Modern Revenue Leader event series is quite simple. As rainmakers, and this audience is full of executives that are responsible for growing revenue at your companies, and everyone is looking to you in this difficult time. Everyone is looking to you to fix this and grow the revenue, as well as where do rainmakers go for advice? It's right here at the Modern Revenue Leader event series. Like, we bring together classically trained and experienced individuals that are in the trenches with us, growing companies. And we not only honor them by naming them modern revenue leaders, but we allow them to give their insight and their best practices to you. So the beautiful thing about what we're doing is that each speaker is sought after, and they often speak at events for 30 minutes, 45 minutes. But at this event, they only get 5 minutes. They get 5 minutes to wow you. They get 5 minutes to share their best practices with you. And I know it's going to be amazing. And here's some things to think about. In our first session with a few hundred executives, one of the things that was on our minds and questions that came up was how to accelerate performance remotely. The reality is we used to live in a world in which working from home was a career limiting move. It was like people who wanted work-life balance. They wanted a balanced family. It was shunned. Working from home was like people who didn't want to be on a career track. And now it went from not being allowed to work from home to you must work from home and you must be efficient. The other piece to the puzzle is this. As salespeople, business development, revenue leaders, we're used to whining and dining, getting speaking in front of conferences, having dinners with clients. Haven't been able to do that, but the results are still being expected. So the Modern Revenue Leader event series is designed for rainmakers to come together, to build relationships, and to share their best practices. And we're so happy to have our version of the Avengers here today, the Revenue Leader Avengers, and we're excited to hear from them. But we're gonna get right into this. Again, as I mentioned to you, they're used to speaking for 30 minutes. So they got 5 minutes. So it's gonna be action-packed and a roller coaster. So stay tuned. And don't worry, in the middle of the event, you, the audience, will have the opportunity to give your insights, your best practices. And we're going to use artificial intelligence and crowdsourcing technology to get all your thoughts and present those at the end. So that's going to be amazing too. And we'll share those results with you via email. So let's get into our first modern revenue leader. So our first modern revenue leader is Ace Watanasuparp. And I just call him Ace. He's kind of like The Rock or Beyonce. The last time Ace and I were together, he was sharing the stage with Gary Vee and a couple of reality TV stars, and his light was shining bright. This guy exceeds expectations. He has been expanding into new markets. He is the National Director of Strategic Sales for Citizens Bank. And he's also known at the bank because he goes across the country and he recruits all the top loan officers from all the other banks as well, using his charm and reputation. But Ace is a modern revenue leader. And the floor is yours, Ace.
Oh, Kelvin, how do I follow up that introduction? Thank you so much for having me. And I have the, I guess, luxury of opening this up. So again, thank you for having me, Kelvin. I'm excited to be here. And, you know, one of the things that I wanted to talk about as I thought about, you know, how do I set the stage? How do I start this session in the right way, right? And I think we all realize is that last year, none of us saw this coming. The pandemic, Kelvin, folks working remotely, folks not being connected. So some of the things that we did during the pandemic, and as it pertains to my line of business, right? So I'm the National Director of Strategic Sales for Citizens Bank. We do residential mortgages, commercial lending as well. And as you know, last year, we probably hit record-breaking interest rates, right? The lowest that we've ever seen in a very, very long time. You know, rates on a 30-year fix, 2.5%, unheard of, unseen, never before. And that's the reason why we closed right around 48 billion last year, Kelvin. So we did the best we've ever done since I've been here at Citizens Bank, but during a very, very challenging time. Everybody was remote. We had to go from, you know, in-person meetings to remote access. So not only technology, things of that nature. And we spent 25 million in technology the year before, not realizing that the pandemic would hit and everything would be accelerated. But one of the challenging things that we experienced last year was the transformation part of it, right? It's one thing to invest in technology. It's another thing on how do you train your folks? How do you create support lines for your team members? So I wanted to talk a little bit about what some of us may be experiencing as leaders, right? When we're looking to the future on growth models, what does that look like with folks now mentally have been working from home a year? We're putting together a mandate for folks to come back to work in June. And we have challenges already in terms of folks that are used to working from home and not wanting to come back, right? So it's human nature. It's one of those things where we have to continue to develop and think about how do we actually create value for our employees? And one of the things that I wanted to share is, for me, I have my 5-5-5 rule. More than ever, we have to stay connected. So 5-5-5 represents 5 people in my database that I want to connect with, 5 people that I want to have new conversations with, whether it's through LinkedIn, whether it's through Facebook, Instagram, or even emails, and then 5 people that I want to follow up on recruiting or leads, right? So I do this, believe it or not, every single day to just stay connected with not only new folks, but folks on my team. And Lauren, please let me know when my 5 minutes is up, okay? But I truly want to emphasize the fact that we're remote today. Connectivity is so important, understanding what really ticks for folks. And I think work-life balance and goals and visions have changed. And I didn't realize that as we were going through the pandemic, but as we're coming out of it and we're getting the vaccinations and people are coming back to work, I realized from talking to hundreds and hundreds of folks on the sales team and on the operations side that mentalities have changed. So have we changed with the times, or are we stuck still in regards to what we thought was a successful model going forward? Some of the things that I really want to talk about is, a lot of times we're on Zoom calls and we have an agenda that we want to hit every single time. But what I've developed throughout in between these Zoom calls is what I call coffee talk. Coffee talk is region by region with a lot of my managers within that marketplace. And coffee talk is about hearing from them, not hearing from ACE, not hearing from our leadership team, but really hearing from them as to what's going on in their marketplace. What are they feeling? What do they need from us as a leadership team, right? I think right now more than ever, it's important for us to be amazing leaders, but more importantly, amazing folks that listen, right? Listening to what's going on in terms of their needs and what type of resources we can implement right now. Because I think training, education, and support, it's so important, especially with all the new technology that we rolled out. So many folks have questions in regards to a 1-800 hotline, it being available 24 hours, right? A lot of people don't think about the support systems, but more than ever, if they don't have a colleague to ask questions on, or one of their managers to ask questions right there and then, face to face, then this resource and this support line is so critical. Another thing that I wanted to talk about is really about success stories. I think so many times we're on the go as revenue leaders and as rainmakers that we always have an agenda. And I think a lot of times we're talking about the next thing that we want to solve or fix for, but we're not talking about things that are actually working, right? We're flying by 1,000 miles per hour. So one thing that I really wanted my leadership team to do is take a step back and let's celebrate our wins, right? When I talk about success stories, I'm talking about acknowledgement, recognition, things of that nature, where we give Credo awards here at Citizens Bank, right? Where it's just it's acknowledging and thanking them, but also sending them maybe a $15 Starbucks card as well. It goes a long way. It's little things, I think, that will go a long way in today's marketplace. And there's something about emotional IQ, right? We call it EQ here, where there's just so much going on and so much stress level. Mental health is something that's very important in today's environment. And I just want to make sure that us as leaders, we're continually improving ourselves. And, I learn every single day on how I can become a better leader. I think forums like this, listening to all the other speakers here, I'm very curious to hear what they're doing in their marketplace or in their industry to really motivate people. Because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. We all may have different products that we're selling or different industries, but at the end of the day, it's about how do we get the best out of our people? And I think if we figure out what really ticks and what really moves them, then we're going to solve and we're going to definitely create a better atmosphere and culture for the company. So, I don't know if I'm up to my 5 minutes yet, Kelvin, but that's what I really wanted to convey to the team here in regards to little things that you guys can take away. I wanted to kind of give you, and I can go deeper. I can dive deeper, Kelvin. I can even dissect a couple things here, but that's really the mantra that I wanted to that I want to stick on in regards to just growth within our teams. And look, it's going to take, number one, strategic planning on how we want to grow effectively. right, expenses on the technology side, because let's face it, what we've been through has expedited technology exponentially. What we thought was going to happen in, let's say, 5 years, Kelvin, is now happening within this last year, right? So there's going to be a lot of eliminations of processes, and we just have to figure out, how do we adopt and how do we apply the new technology, and how do we make our workforce even better, right? More productive, more effective. And no matter what industry that we're in, consumers have the knowledge and the tools in their fingertips. They can all go online and find out. I meet with clients today, and they're talking about interest rates. They already know what the interest rates are, right? Online, everywhere, every bank, right? So when they come to me, they already have an interest rate in mind. So what is it that my team is going to do differently than everyone else? And that's what we're talking about, right? How to stay present, how to be in a part of the community when you're not there right now because of COVID. What are some of the things that you can do to create seminars, sessions, speaking engagements such as this, right? So there's so many things that we can talk about and dive into, but look, I'm just appreciative to be amongst all of you guys. I know all of you guys are rainmakers in your own right, and I'm just so happy to be here, Kelvin. So,
Ace, that was a masterclass in 5 minutes. I mean, maybe 5+, but it was
I'm trying to condense.
No,
I'm trying to condense.
You filled that 5 minutes with so many insights. I was taking a few notes, but the thing that really struck me, two things. One was a real actionable step that everyone could take away. This concept of 5-5-5, it's all about building new behaviors, right? And new processes. And that's what I'm going to take. So 5 people in my database that I want to connect with, 5 people that I want to have a new conversation with, and 5 people that I want to follow up with. That's amazing. And again, it's something that everybody can apply to their day-to-day. And I can imagine the results that you get from that. And then the other thing I really got from your comments was really about, and it can't be said too many times, investing in our people in different ways maybe than we have before. So this idea of having these regular coffee chats where you're listening, and maybe we're not talking, maybe we're we have 2 ears, 1 mouth, so we're listening. And then the last piece is celebrating those wins. So thank you, Ace. That was some phenomenal insight and a great way to kick us off. And with that, what I want to do is transition to our second and amazing modern revenue leader, Jana Vondran. Thank you so much for joining us. Jana is the SVP of Global Business Services at Ingram Micro. And that gets me very excited because I'm based down here in Southern California. So Ingram Micro is a hometown hero down in SoCal. And, in this role, she's focused on developing and deploying global strategies and best practices across this entire vast global organization. She's a leader, a thought partner, a strategist within her organization. And then she comes to Ingram Micro with a long career, about 17 years, I believe, at Siemens, and really excited to hear about your insights in how you're leading during this really interesting time, leading remotely, driving performance remotely. So without further ado, I want to introduce Jana to share some modern revenue leader insights.
Thank you very much, Lauren, and thank you very much for having me. Very happy to be here and with this group. So yeah, for me, really, first of all, I want to kind of pick up a little bit on what Ace said as well. It's cover your basics, and that's really about enabling your team digitally. We went from like a very, as Ace said before, we went from something that we thought would maybe happen in 5 years, like really the remote work, the kind of fully digital enabled in a year. And for us in some of our locations, we had to go remote within 2 hours. Our Manila team basically was working at night, 10 p.m. The president of the Philippines comes on and says, like, in 2 hours, we're shutting down, all public transportation. So thing was, okay, let's get them first into safety, but then how do we quickly enable one? And it was not an easy one. I have to say, we probably during those first weeks struggled to make sure everyone has the phone lines open to make actually sales calls, right? To have the technology. But so for me, it's like cover your bases first, and that's tools, technology, and modeling. Meaning you have to have the technology, of course, the different channels of interacting, collaborating. And I think even now we are seeing there is more need. Because yes, we have the normal communication tools now, the Zooms, the Teams, the chat applications, but How about really collaboration in terms of whiteboarding, things that we've done usually in a room? So really making those tools available, and then really making sure that your associates understand and are enabled to use those tools. So provide learning, provide either video classes, a lot of digital learning, so that people feel comfortable really living in this digital new world. And very important, my third part there is modeling. One of the things I can say, I always have the video on. Every chat I have, when someone calls me now on the phone, I get a little irritated because I can't see the person. So modeling the behavior that you want to see, really, that means also new technologies, right? Embrace them. And that means, yes, I might be in a meeting that I'm chairing and the technology might not work perfectly, but we're trying it and we're kind of learning together. So I think that's a really important piece. But I think we all learned when we went into this pandemic, we thought we were all very high, right? Everyone was kind of like productivity, engagement was very high. Now we are realizing this is a marathon, not a sprint. And with this, a lot of fatigue is setting in, right? People are getting a little disengaged because we are working so much more now in what I would consider functional team silos, rather than actually having those natural things of meeting someone in the cafeteria, meeting someone at the coffee machine, and just having that cross-pollination. And that's something we need to address. So the second area that I want to cover around is really around the people. So one of the things that we deployed very early on was the people first strategy. And that was safety and health as a first part, right? It didn't matter. We made sure people got into this safe environment with them and their families, and they were feeling secure in that, and they felt taken care of. And then the second part on this really is well-being. So Ace already talked about it. So we implemented a lot of podcasts, tools, mental health, coping mechanism, yoga classes online, podcasts that some of our associates spoke up on how to manage homeschooling, just sharing ideas on how to do this, because we all are in this together. Healthy cooking classes, because let's be honest, I know for my home here, our sugar intake has taken, really gone up. So how do we stay healthy and keeping that in mind? So, and also very important, being very conscious about which of our associates are living alone. Who do we need to check in more often, and to just make sure that they are okay? And so with building this trust, right? People feel positive and safe. That creates loyalty, that is trust in the company, and our customers perceive that. So that's also, from a customer experience, something that's so taking care of your own people to really creating that positive energy also around, with your customers. And then last but not least, I would say communication, more communication, and truly inclusive communication. Making sure that communication is not a one-way street. It's an exchange, it's a conversation. And we've spent a lot of effort and time in this last year to really understand the impact our communication has. How many people are we reaching? Who are we reaching? Are they reading? What are some of the channels that the associates prefer? How would they like to get this information? Is it printed? Is it a video? What really works for them? And how do we learn also what is important to them? So we've implemented a few things to make sure that, in our communication, everyone is a leader. So let's not just listen to leaders, and let's just not give leaders the platform, but let's also bring associates and their stories. It's about stories, really much more storytelling than just, here is some communication, and about making individuals feel very special. And so we created different campaigns, both printed and on social media, as well as a video series featuring associates and their life story. Just, what's going on, how do they live, what are some of the things, hobbies that are important to them, and how is their role, their function in the company supporting the overall vision of the company. So really kind of bringing that up to creating this joint communication. And again, it's not just, people don't just want to hear from their leaders, they want to hear from their peers. And so having really this kind of mindset, I think, was really important for us. So if I, kind of summarize it, it's like, have the basics, make sure people are enabled, make people first your strategy, and really think consciously about your communication so that it becomes an exchange, a conversation, rather than just a one-way street.
Jana, you are amazing. You are a modern revenue leader. That's what we're talking about. We do have to cover our basics here. And you're right, enabling that team with the tools, the technology, and the modeling. But none of that matters if you don't put the people first. It was in one of our sessions at the kickoff. It's our employee. We work for our employees. They don't work for us. We got to put them in position to succeed. And
100%.
yeah, we're so happy to have you here. And that's exactly what the executives in the audience need to hear. Sometimes we just need to hear it from someone else. But we love you being here, and thank you so much for being a modern revenue leader, Jana. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Kelvin.
All right. So next up, we have Roy Ratnavel, and he is the Executive VP, Head of Distribution at CI Global Asset Management. It's the largest asset management company in the whole of Canada. And Roy, for 2020, in a rough year, he was recognized as one of the top 50 best executives in Canada in 2020. What a tough year to be a top executive. And he's currently locked down in Toronto. Roy, you are a modern revenue leader and you have our attention.
Well, thank you, Kel. And about that leadership award I got, I suspect some kind of a administrative error, but I'll take it. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts regarding remote leadership. And I thought what I'll do today is not to be too specific, but maybe high level so that it can apply across all industries. It is remarkable that it has been 1 year since the world was upended by COVID. The build back from the pandemic is really upon us, and the world has already started to look a lot different. But absolutely believe this can be a moment for charting a new way of doing things to adapt to this new normal as we engage our team members and each other has changed. Now, post-COVID world will be an increasingly hybrid world, there's no doubt, which will bring together both virtual and in-person engagement. And this trend was already happening, let's not kid each other. But COVID simply accelerated this change. Mike Tyson once said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Collectively, the entire world got punched in the mouth by the pandemic. So how can leaders leverage the capacity of the entire team, which is currently a distributed workforce? Before this, you could walk on the floors or the halls to be visible to get the unspoken team feedback. It is harder now because leaders they can't physically do that. As a result, have lost the signal to and from the team. In the military, they call it touch of the cloth. Knowing others are standing next to you, shoulder to shoulder, and that was reassuring. But now that's gone. So we need to try to rebuild that feeling using digital technology. So how can we digitally lead in this informal time while being commanders in the tent? First, leaders must hold on to longer term values while at the same time admitting the reality of the current situation. Don't deny it, but recognize it and adapt. Be human, be honest, be humble about what you know and what you don't know. Don't be Pollyanna, but be pragmatic. When the facts change, be open to change your opinion and your decision. Failing to be pragmatic is such a disservice to your own self-interest. Don't minimize the threat or the challenge of the days ahead by communicating the important things first and be absolutely clear with your team. It is important to deliver a proactive, hands-on approach to provide the team with an overarching vision that is coupled with tactical execution steps to manage through this difficult situation. Be strategic as you lead through this and focus on the following 3 C's: care, cope, command. Care by providing help to the team and direct reports so that they are extending the same support to your clients. Cope by showing your human side. Empathize and demonstrate to them that we are all in this together and facing a real crisis, because humanity thrives on hope and support. And command by taking ownership of the situation and drive the business in a direction that benefits employees, clients, and the shareholders. To achieve this, you must communicate with confidence. Confidence comes with consistency of your message by giving them a vision of a new world after this near-term crisis. You must be more genuine in every virtual connection with your team. You have to be more focused when someone is talking to you. Show them the respect and the attention they deserve, and not just because the person is talking to you, but also because others on the Zoom meeting are watching you as a leader and judging you by what level of importance you put on them. So use daily or weekly snackable videos to communicate instead of email, because emails are value neutral and do not convey tone. So you need to be more thoughtful and intentional about that effort. Tell your team that about what you know and what is happening, and give them an update in the clear as possible way in terms of the actual state of things. Not as you wish it was, but as you believe it to be right now. Your candor and honesty will be rewarded over time with your credibility. If you're honest, and try to be honest all the time, always be honest, because if you're afraid that you may frighten them, when in fact they will be filled with other information sources that sometimes could make it even worse. The global pandemic certainly has changed the way we work by blurring what was already a hazy divide between life and work. When you are work from home, you're never home, you're always at work. And the danger is the work hours creep up. So essentially, a person can be working from all the time from home, and it can be incredibly tiring on them. So it is possible and easy for someone to work with no life, leading to burnout and other family issues, or have life and no work, leading to a career suicide. Leaders should be mindful of both and be disciplined around work and life. As leaders, you must set limits and expectations about what hours you expect people to work. Of course, you should and could adjust them for individuals who need it, but you must create a very focused and understood expectation. You have to set those kind of expectation priorities so that your team can do what you want them to do, so they can help you with the vision you set for your organization. As you mitigate the effects of pandemic on your business and manage through modernization of your team for this new world, you must be nimble, move faster, be flexible, and build a flatter sales team or any team you're running. You need to find new ways to connect and complete tasks so you can feel accomplished as a leader. As leaders, we need to live our lives taking the risk all the time that we don't know enough about this current pandemic situation, that we haven't understood it enough, that we can't know enough, and always hungrily operating on the margins of potentially a greater harvest of future knowledge and wisdom. Choose intellectual humility over hubris and being headstrong every time. It is okay to admit to your team, I don't know, while being radically open-minded and curious. Trust your survival growth instincts in times of uncertainty. Hope provides a positive vision for the future about what is possible, motivating us to look forward. While it is optimistic state of mind, hope can emerge from most distressing, even tragic situations. This is one of those times. Be well, stay safe, and thank you.
Wow, Roy, I was hanging on every single word. I was trying to take notes madly, and I know everyone probably was trying to capture all these pearls of wisdom. I want to let people know we will be sharing this out and some of the high points of each of our wonderful speakers. But just to touch on a couple things, what I loved about what you had to say, Roy, was it was a combination of the Pollyanna versus pragmatic and proactive. So how do you make sure that you are rooted in truth, honesty, and objectivity and being really transparent while painting that vision for the new world? So that I think the steps that you walked through in terms of how leaders can do that were phenomenal. So thank you for that amongst a number of other amazing insights. And, I think the group really is better for having heard some of your personal experiences and how you've translated those into success in your modern revenue leader role. So thank you for that. We have all, I'm guessing if you're like me, you're sitting here and your mind is racing with all these great ideas and thoughts for how you might adapt your approach as a modern revenue leader during this time. So what I wanted to do was to bring everybody into the discussion. And if you are on this call, I would like you to participate. And the good news is you can participate just using your phone. So please pull out your cell phone and use the camera app to scan the QR code that you should see appearing on our screen. And that will get us started to have a discussion amongst this whole group around how are you as a leader, every single person here, accelerating performance in the remote hybrid work world. If you don't want to use your phone, we've dropped the link into the chat, but the phone is a really easy way to get in there and start to answer the questions. There's 3 steps to participating in an exchange. The first step is share. And this is where you get to share your own independent, anonymous thought on how you are adapting. The second is you get to rate the thoughts of everyone else. And you can rate as many as you'd like. I'll encourage everyone to rate quite a few. I'll talk you through it. And then the third step is to discover, and that's where we all get to see what's most important to the group. We're going to take 5 minutes, and I'm excited to see what some of the results are. So once you're in the Thoughtexchange browser, you're going to be asked to answer just a couple questions and then start sharing your thoughts. You can share as many thoughts as you like, and I'll give you an indication when it's time to move on to starring if you haven't already done that. Great. So if you haven't already done that, grab your phone and jump into the exchange. Awesome. We've got about 20 people in there. Let's keep getting that number up. And share one thought, share a couple. I'm going to stay quiet because most people like to think a little bit while they're doing this, and my talking doesn't help. Let's add 1 more minute to the timer, please. Great. So if you haven't already added your thoughts, go ahead and start wrapping up, adding 1 thought, 2 thoughts, just a couple, and then move on to the rating part, because that is really where some of the magic comes in elevating what we as a group think are the most important thoughts and ideas. And once you've added your thought, I would challenge everyone to try to rate at least 20 thoughts. Once you get rolling, it's pretty easy. So just, try to move through about 20 thoughts just so we can get as robust of a exchange as possible. All right, so this is great. If everyone could just wrap up rating a few more, and we are gonna close off this exchange. We'll keep it open for later if you want to go back and rate some more thoughts. But if we can share that screen back again. Great. So I want to just highlight a couple things, and if we have time at the end, we'll dive in a little bit deeper, but I want to make sure we have time for our last two amazing speakers. But what I'm so excited to see is some of these great thoughts around transparency and sincerity, this acknowledgement that Zoom fatigue is real, leading with empathy. And what we'll do is we're going to pull together all these thoughts and bring them together into a thought exchange report that we can share with everybody who's here. But without further ado, I'd like to move on. And with this inspiration, I'd love to move on to introducing our next amazing modern revenue leader. This is Zach Burnett. He is the Senior Vice President of Sales for Vericent. This is one of my favorite companies. I've really enjoyed getting to know the team over at Vericent. And he is a proven software sales executive with 17 years of experience, really focused on the topic we're discussing today. So driving revenue growth and creating high performance cultures. He's a self-described turnaround specialist. That he is all about helping organizations transform, specifically thinking about adapting sales methodology to drive deal execution and strategic go-to-market. So I'm really excited to hear his insights on how are we and how is he and his team addressing this newest interesting and unique challenge around remote performance leadership. So without further ado, Zach, please take the floor and share some of your thoughts and insights.
Lauren, thank you. And thanks for having me today. It's great to be here with so many really progressive leaders. So as I prepared for this today, I thought a little bit about back to when I was a rep. And when I first started in software, I remember beginning with a team and a cohort of software sales people. And I remember a bunch of them getting a bunch of deals that were bluebirds, right? Bluebirds are these sales deals that like drop on your lap. It's pretty unexpected, and it's without much effort. And I always got really upset why I wasn't the lucky person getting the bluebird. And I would fixate on this, and I really wrapped a ton of energy and effort around it. And to get through that, I coined this term called control the controllables, right? I can't control my luck, but what I could control is the effort and energy I put into my business, the approach I took, and how I engage with clients in building my strategy. So taking that story and that mantra that I really lived by for a while, let's fast forward to March of 2020. I'm flying back from Sao Paulo, Brazil, the last business trip I took, and I dropped into my home office where we began this world of Zoom and remote working, right? So aside from the fact that it's very weird to work from home and that everyone's vision got worse from looking at a screen all the time, one of the things that really changed was the rhythm of our business, right? not just the face-to-face interactions with clients and those interpersonal communication relationships you can build, but the rhythm that changed was the interaction with your team members. Those unscripted, intimate moments over a coffee or a beer that you're able to build a relationship, learn about them and their family, but really do some of that ad hoc coaching. And it's so tremendously valuable to our reps and also to us, because we're constantly gathering information that's really informal. And so over time, you kind of progressed into this daily rhythm where you jump on Zoom and you have back-to-back meetings. So at the end of last year, I kind of took stock and said, listen, why is that I feel so exhausted at the end of the day? And I looked at it, and basically I realized that I did not have control of my calendar and my time. I started looking into a lot of the interactions I had, and some of the things were great, but a lot of things I wasn't actively participating. I was more passive in nature, yet I still wasn't able to do a lot of the things I did while traveling around. So it got back to the thing that, what could I control? You can control your time. And so it got back to, I need to control the controllables. And the most valuable thing that we have as leaders is our time and how we use that time. So what I did is I actually blocked twice a week my calendar for half days. I believe that we as sales professionals have a grid of 10 blocks, morning and afternoon, for 5 days. Great news for those that are in sales. If you want more blocks, you can work in the evenings or the weekend. But that being said, it's you have to use that time and energy to engage not only your clients, but your team. And so what I did is I was able to take that time back and have those one-on-one ad hoc conversations with my team members to do a couple things, to gather kind of information that we probably wouldn't hear on a public forum with 25 of their colleagues. I was able to have those intimate moments around what's happening with them personally and show that empathy and care for them. And more importantly, I was able to do some of that ad hoc coaching, which helps calibrate and make our teams better. So over time, I began to feel refreshed and recharged. So what I encouraged my team to do was take some time and over a 1 week period, evaluate what you spent your time by the hour and write it down. And what my team came to the same conclusion that I came to probably 2 months prior is that they did not have control of their time. They were passively participating in meetings that just weren't providing the utility that they needed to their teams and to them. And they weren't gathering the information in a way that's really productive. So what I encourage them to do is take half a day once a week to have an informal time to do strategy, to think, to gather information in an informal way. And what that did is that gave them the energy and I think the push and the ability to recharge to get back at it, because they were able to build those relationships and really understand what was happening in their businesses even more effectively. Now, like as you mentioned, Lauren, we do use the Thoughtexchange platform, and from that we were able to gather a lot of that information. Our team did not feel in control. So we as an organization instituted that every Wednesday, everyone within Vericent, it's a no meeting Wednesday. You cannot plan a formal meeting on Wednesdays because it gives you time to do your work, to think strategically, to speak to your clients, your colleagues, your friends. And what that's doing is that giving us an ability to be more productive and taking control back of their time and their business. So the thing I'm going to give back to the team is always think about the things you can control. Control the controllables. And that's how I think our organization is feeling empowered and more effective in this really challenging environment.
Zach, I love that. Zach, you are a modern revenue leader. That's what I'm talking about. We got to control the controllables. But you're right. The rhythm has completely changed. I remember just be out there wheeling and dealing, whining and dining, all shut down. So we know that the most valuable thing we have is the time. And I think you really took leadership. A lot of leaders right now are not in a situation where they're telling their team, hey, no meetings on Wednesdays. A lot of leaders are not telling their team, hey, block off a half a day block for yourself to think. I mean, that's some modern stuff right there. And we're going to be distributing this content wisely. You're going to see me on LinkedIn promoting this, Zach. I might steal a couple of your lines, and after I use it 3 times, it's mine. I think that's how it works. But you're a modern revenue leader, Zach, and we love you for being here. Thank you. All right. So now, to close us out, we have Marcos Torres. He's the head of U.S. Communications, Media, and Entertainment Groups at RBC, the Royal Bank of Canada. And me and Marcos are tight. I mean, we have gone on vacations together with the wives to New Orleans. He has hosted my family in Miami. This is my brother here. But I mean, the man is a family man. He's a hardcore businessman that has been in investment banking for 20 years, where people burn out in 2. And I just love having you here, Marcos. And also the fact is that you think big and you follow through on your promises, but your humility exceeds your great ability. And the fact that you're on 3 national non-for-profit boards on top of all that you're doing, it's amazing. And I really respect you as a family man as well. Marcos Torres, you are a modern revenue leader and you have our attention.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Kelvin. Thank you, Lauren. Kelvin, how the hell do I follow that introduction? How do I do that? So look, I wanna, the world has been said by the other participants on the panel, the world has changed dramatically and it's done so incredibly quickly. Not just COVID, but also the demands of work are even more than they were before. And folks are, you know, as was said earlier, working incredible hours. I was talking to my son the other day who told me it was Wednesday and I thought it was Thursday. And then we started saying it's Blur's Day because it's all a blur, right? Like Blur's Day. So it's like Saturday I was working. I got up one morning and was doing some work and my wife told me that it was Saturday. I thought it was Friday. And so just the comments that were made earlier, I think people have been incredibly critical in this time of working from home in terms of just like the togetherness, the humanity of you connecting with people. I've gotten to know more of my employees during this year of COVID than I ever did before. And it wasn't that I wasn't interacting with them socially before, but it's that I went out of my way to make sure that I knew what they were up to, because there were colleagues colleagues' parent who died of COVID, folks who were, had distant relatives who died of COVID. And so I wanted to really dig in and understand that and be a leader for them. And so that was that direct and open communication. And more importantly, as was said earlier, the listening skill, right? This is all, a lot of this stuff that we're practicing now from a leadership perspective during COVID is stuff that our kindergarten teachers tried to teach us, right? They're very basic things that you're going back to, very like long-lasting principles that survive any pandemic or any turbulence. And so the training and development has been a huge component of this, spending time really getting to know my employees, in that process really studying where they could be better and where they want to be better, and matching that up and doing some virtual training for them. In our business, in the investment banking business, they always talk about KYC, know your customer, right? Before you do a deal. It's a big compliance term in my industry. And so I like KYC. I call it know your clients and know your colleagues. And the colleague part is incredibly important. The know your colleagues is super, super important. Have an open mind always, as was said earlier. There are a lot of, I am shocked. I have about 100 full-time folks that started in June who have not seen an office. They just came out of college and they've been working professionally in banking and doing 80 to 100 hours a week, including working on weekends, and they've not seen a person physically since they began. So the demands on those folks and those young folks are incredibly complicated, just from an even training and development perspective, learning how to model, learning how to do presentations, learning how to present, frankly, in a physical world. And so it's been incredibly challenging. One thing that I like to think of, just to keep me honest, is the word black. Like the word black is interesting. So B for be real and human, L for listening intensely, A, ask a lot of questions, C, compassionately coach, and that's an interesting and kind of complicated term, but compassionately coach. And then K is the topic I talked about earlier, know your customer, know your colleague. And I think that those things kind of crystallize stuff, because as we return back to work, we learned some incredibly valuable lessons during this pandemic that I think we've become incredibly more efficient. We talk to each other a lot more. We think about each other a lot more, and just the sheer amount of work. Like 2020 was the best year that I've ever had in my 22 years of banking, and one of the best years that my firm's ever had. And my group, for sure, the business that I run, the media and communications business, had the best year ever. And I've been at RBC for 9 years. And prior to that, I was at JP Morgan for 15 years. I think as you step back and listen, I've learned everything that I've learned about leadership through this pandemic has been from listening, from really asking questions, having what we call chat and choose. So I'll get up every Saturday and every Sunday morning, I'll have a breakfast session virtually with just one person, one employee. And we'll do that for 30 minutes. And we'll talk about stuff that, to this day surprises me, because it's stuff that I just did not know about people, which is, it's interesting in its own right, but it's really cool to get to know somebody that intensely. And so the chat and choose have been incredibly helpful. The thinking about embracing technology in when we come back to work, right? So not forgetting about the way technology helped us get through this, but also not over, getting the Zoom fatigue, as Lauren calls it, and going back to that scenario. So is work ever going to be the same? Of course not. We're probably going to be working from home a couple of days a week. And we've instituted, the comment that others made earlier around just giving people days off, making sure they get mandatory time off, having the chat and choose, as I mentioned, with people, doing a lot of leveraging our employee resource groups, our ERGs, to put on virtual content that speaks directly to the issues of the time, not to theoretical philosophical issues, but the mental health issues that we're dealing with, right? Like how does, for example, a person of a diverse background really succeed in this virtual environment when they had issues when the world was together, right? When folks were physically in person. And so those nuanced issues, I have the privilege of chairing our firm's Diversity Leadership Council, and I sit on our investment banking management committee, and we deal with all of these very, very nuanced issues. And I am just shocked, like at the end of the day, at how often we sometimes get lost in our world and forget about humanity, forget about being human, about having a conversation and listening. So again, to me, it's all back to basics. It's all back to what Miss Acosta, my kindergarten teacher, taught me around being nice, right? Doing the right things, listening, asking questions, not interrupting people instead of an email, call people. So back to basics. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Marcos, what an amazing way for us to close off this hour of, I called it a power hour. It is an hour of insights beyond belief. A couple things that I took away from your amazing comments. One was KYC, not just know your customers, know your colleagues. And I thought that really juxtaposed nicely with the comment you made around, you had 100 people who started during this time. The way in which we onboard people and make them part of our organizations has got to evolve and change. And I'd see that you and the team at Verison are really RBC are really pushing forward on that. What I wanted to do was we did a great exchange with the whole group, and I wanted to just highlight a couple things as we close out. One is lead with empathy, transparency, and trust. Marcos, you talked about that and how you're building that into your cadence at RBC. And I think everyone touched on it, and it can be done differently depending on the kind of revenue leader you are. Protecting and valuing your team's time. That was a comment that came out through the exchange. And I think everyone discussed how are we restructuring our days as leaders and helping our teams restructure their days for maximum success. And then the last thought that I wanted to share, and I imagine this will end up being the conversation we address in the next Modern Revenue Leader discussion, is having a clear strategy and expectations for performance and communicating that back regularly so everyone's rowing in the same direction. As we're more distributed, it's easy for the focus to fracture and for people to move further and further away in terms of how they're executing on the strategy. So I wanted to thank everybody who's been part of this session, all of our amazing Modern Revenue Leader speakers, everyone who shared their thoughts during the discussion. I hope you got as much out of it as I certainly did. If you couldn't take notes fast enough like I did, don't worry, we will be sharing a recap of the entire session with this entire group and for anyone who couldn't make it, and look forward to seeing you at the next Modern Revenue Leader session. Thank you, Marcos. Thank you, everyone.